you a musician interested in improving your performance? Welcome to Notes on Jazz. I'm your host, Keith Davis. If you want to learn more about jazz improvisation, harmony, and composition, or just want to improve your piano skills, this is the place for you. We'll be hosting interviews with fellow musicians, offering tips and techniques on study and practice, and lots of other cool stuff. Whatever instrument you play, or if you're a vocalist, you will find something helpful and interesting here. So come hang out with us at Notes on Jazz. So hello, I'm here today with Martin Bejerano. He's a wonderful pianist who I met just recently. He was here in town where I live in Greenville, South Carolina, playing with the Jonathan Kreisberg Quartet. And it was just great to hear this great group, but also to hear and meet Martin. And it turns out we have some old friends in common. We'll talk about that a little bit. But I'd like to just introduce you to Martin Bejerano. Hi, Martin. How are you today?
Hey, Keith, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on your show. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this has been really fun. I've been interviewing some really great people, so I'm really happy to have you.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. So I know you're from Miami, and that must I'd like to hear a little bit about that. That certainly must have influenced your beginnings in music and how you've gone about learning and gotten into music. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, Miami is like really different than any other city in the U.S. Really, it's a very unique city, and I love it, which is why I moved back down here after living in New York City for a long time. But yeah, and you know, Miami is a very multicultural type of town, of course, and I have a Cuban American background also. So obviously. You know, musically, I heard was around a lot of Cuban and Latin, Hispanic music, Latin American music quite a bit when I was a kid. Although I really never studied it, actually. Even to this day, I've never really studied it except for just a little bit on my own. So even though that's not the kind of music I went into initially, it definitely was always kind of like in my ears and in me somewhere. Yeah.
I hear the influence of that in your playing. I definitely hear it. So I have a little bit of experience playing Afro-Cuban music as well. So I definitely hear the influence of music.
Well, my last record, I finally did like a kind of I hate to use the word Latin jazz album, but it's called Cuban #Cuban American. And it was definitely a record where I on purpose tried to explore some more Afro-Cuban, things and some of my roots a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll look forward to checking it out. That sounds very, very interesting. I love that music. So
yeah, me too. It's incredible. Yeah. Not to mention the Cuban musicians that I got to play with a lot of Cuban musicians since high school, pretty much, and they're just incredible musicians, across the board.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It seems to be really it's so much part of the culture, so much more part of the culture than it seems like than our, which if you want to call it normal American culture. It's the music, it's so much more. There's so much more depth to the culture in a way, musically speaking.
Absolutely, yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. So how did you get started playing the piano?
So I never wanted to play the piano. I wanted to play drums, like a lot of musicians, I think. A lot of pianists too. I mean, I think all piano players were all kind of, that's why we picked piano, because you can still kind of hit it. You're still a percussive instrument. And my mom said, if you take piano lessons for a year and get like a good solid music background, or at least start in music, then if you take it seriously and you stick with it, then after drums, after a year, if you want to switch to drums, then I'll let you switch to drums. And she had actually taught me, that was when I was like 9 or something, but she had actually taught me some basic piano when I was 7. And I used to pick up things kind of by ear. She played a little bit, and like I would go after her and pick up some of the songs she was playing.
Nice.
But then I started playing baseball, and I didn't want to do music at all. Anyway, so I did the piano lessons, like real lessons, for a year. And then after the year, I asked for a Casio keyboard instead of a drum set. And that was it. Stuck with the piano.
Yeah. Nice, nice. I'm
Yeah.
glad you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have to say again, I really enjoyed your playing. I mean, as a pianist, I noticed certain things like the way that your hands move together up and down the keyboard. That's a really, it's very, your hands are integrated in a really great way that is not
Thank you.
always the case with pianists, you know?
Thank you.
That's
Yeah, I
one thing
appreciate
that
that.
really impressed me.
Well,
Especially
I
that
mean, I started
terrible.
off, I'm sorry, what was that last thing you said?
I said, especially considering that terrible piano you were playing that
Oh
night.
man, wow, yeah. That was
Yeah,
not
yeah.
a great
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I started off, classical,
Uh-huh.
studying classical music. And even in college, I was a classical performance major for almost 2 years. And then I switched.
Wow.
That's a real, I'm real lucky to have that background because certainly it facilitates more two-hand independence and, helps you get both hands involved, more comfortable doing that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really wonderful. So
Thank you.
I'm going to check out more music. Actually, I really
Cool.
was knocked out by your playing.
Thank
So
you.
you were, it's my pleasure. You were a roommate of a good friend of mine when you were in college, Al
Yeah.
Sergel, who's a great
Mr.
drummer.
Al Sergel,
I
yeah.
had the opportunity to play with, Mr. Al Sergel. Yeah. I've had, not a huge number of opportunities to play with him. We did a recording day together and I've played a couple of concerts with him and things like that. He's just amazing. And then Ron, the bass player that plays in my trio.
Right. Ron Brundle.
Yeah. So, we're doing a concert Saturday night, actually.
Oh, beautiful, man.
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
I'll tell him I said hello, of course.
Yeah, I certainly will. Yeah.
Man, I owe a lot to Al. When as I just said, I was a classical major at Florida State University, and I didn't even know they had a jazz program or a jazz piano teacher or anything really. I was kind of a little out of it at that point in my life. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do musically. So then I saw a flyer up to audition for jazz band. And I was like, oh, well, I had played jazz in high school and, I could play a little bit. And so I was like, oh, that'd be fun. At least I'll still get some jazz stuff, So it turned out there was a great, amazing piano teacher there, Bill Peterson, jazz teacher. And it turned out that there was a very small group of jazz musicians there. They didn't have a big program. It was a very small program. It wasn't even a major. It was just an area of study. And there was just a few guys, but they were monster players, and Al was one of those guys, Al had gone to Berkeley for a couple of years and then transferred to Florida State. And he was a little older than me. He knew way more about jazz and had more experience playing than me. So I just, if someone like him hadn't been there to play with, I wouldn't have had the same experience and I wouldn't have grown the way that I think I grew in those, 3 or 4 years that he was there. So and just hanging around him all the time and talking about records and him showing me all sorts of stuff. I mean, we just gigged all the time and played even when we weren't gigging, sessions and his class and combos. And so I was really lucky to have someone like Al, there at that time. Yeah.
That's great. You'll like hearing that, man.
Yeah. Well, it's just funny how that happens. Certain people just pop in your life at the right time and and take care of you.
Right. Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's great. So did you end up graduating from school there?
I did. Yeah, I switched majors and to a Bachelor of Music Jazz Studies emphasis. It's real useful major right there. And
I think you've done all right without it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, man. And I went after there. I went to University of Miami for my master's in jazz performance. They have, of course, a great jazz program there. And graduated with a master's from there. And stuck around Miami for a few years to save some money. And then about 2 years after I got my master's, I moved to New York City. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what happened when you got to New York? I know a little bit of your story, but I'd rather let you tell it,
Sure.
So what?
Yeah. Well, I was, again, it's like we just said, the people being in your life at the right time. And just a lot of really lucky, fortunate things happen. I also think I did the right thing. I was going to go to grad school in New York, and then I didn't because it was a lot of money, and I only got like a half scholarship, and I didn't really want to, and New York kind of freaked me out because I was from Miami, which is a completely different, town.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I'm glad that I waited the 4 years, because I felt by the time I moved to New York, my playing had really gotten better, and I felt like I was a lot more ready, for that.
Yeah.
So I went to New York, and I had some friends already there, kind of. So that helped. One reason why I moved when I did, because I kind of had some friends there that hooked me up with some gigs. And one of my best friends is a really big time Broadway musical director and orchestrator and arranger. And he got me doing some theater work and things like that to help pay the bills, and playing for a Broadway casting company, which was a really great gig. And then I just got real lucky about less than a year that I had been living there. A good friend of mine, Marcus Strickland, the great saxophone player who's from Miami, also Marcus and EJ, twins. EJ's amazing drummer. So they had been living in New York in a while. And the minute I got up there, pretty quickly, I started playing with Marcus's group quite a bit, and with EJ, his brother. And the summer after I moved up, Marcus got hooked up with Roy Haynes, and Roy was looking to put together a group of kind of younger guys, and Marcus recommended me, and I got that gig, in like 9 months, which is insanely lucky.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Yeah,
it was crazy, So again, just knowing it's, someone being in your life in the right time and the right moment and helping you out, Yeah,
that's awesome.
So. So then from there, I started playing with some other people. I started touring with great guitar player Russell Malone.
Yeah, I know Russell from Atlanta.
You know Russell? Yeah,
from Atlanta years
ago. Oh, yeah, from Atlanta, sure.
Yeah.
So, And I toured with him for like 9 years, and I ended up playing with Roy for close to 20 years, right up to the pandemic.
Wow.
So just very fortunate.
Yes. Are there some recordings from that period when you were with Roy Haynes?
Yeah. We have a record called Fountain of Youth, which was out early 2000s. That was actually nominated for a Grammy.
Wow. Right.
But didn't win. McCoy Tyner beat us out. Darn it. And then there's a record called Royalty also that I'm on. And I did about 3 or 4 records with Russell, 2 records that are live from the Jazz Standard Volume 1, and then live from the Jazz Standard Volume 2. And then a record called Playground with Russell as well.
Yeah, nice, man. Yeah, he's always been a great player, man. I mean,
yeah, man, he's amazing. Crazy guy.
Yeah, he's a crazy guy.
He's a crazy dude, but
you said it first, man.
Well, that's what the first thing that the first thing is, man, Russell's an amazing player. The second thing that comes up is, man, he's insane. He's crazy. In a good way, kind of.
Yeah, in a good way. True.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Mostly in a good way.
Yeah. I haven't seen him for a long time. So
yeah.
So that's amazing. Roy Haynes is that's what a great opportunity, man. And Russell both, Yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah. So you lived there. When did you move back to Miami?
I moved back 2008 ish. And my wife is also from Miami, so I kind of dragged her up to New York. Like we weren't even. I went first, and then we got married about a year later after I moved, and then I dragged her right up to New York. We kind of did a long distance. But I always told her, look, what if you want to, I need to stay up here 5-6 years or something. But if you want to get out, then we'll get out. So at that point, we were thinking about having kids and all that kind of stuff, and she was definitely ready to get out of New York. So she got she happened to get a good job offer right about the time, right when she started looking down here. So she took a job down here. I stayed up in New York a little while longer, and then finally moved down. Although, like, for a good 2 to 3 years, I was back and forth quite a bit. I was in New York maybe every month or 2 months or something like that.
Yeah. So are you doing, what else are you doing in Miami besides I know you're playing, of course you're playing.
Yeah, mostly I'm teaching, really.
Yeah.
As far as in Miami, I was, again, really lucky. When I moved down, I reached out to Whit Seidner, who was the head of the Jazz program, the University of Miami Jazz program, and told him, hey, I'm going to be living down in Miami, and if you ever have a teaching thing pop up, adjunct or whatever, let me know. And he's like, okay. And then a year later, the piano position opened up. And he hired me as adjunct, to fill in because they do a search, that whole thing.
Yeah, sure.
And then I did the year in adjunct and ended up getting the full-time job. So again, just really being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, sure, man. That's awesome, though, man.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, obviously you're a great player. I'm sure you're a great teacher too.
Oh, so, thank you, man. Yeah. I love teaching, and UM is an amazing school. It's one of the best jazz schools in the country. The students are really, really great. So and I like working there because they're really good about letting the teachers also or supporting the teachers kind of continuing their professional careers as well. So I'm able to tour and travel a bit and do my other stuff, and still keep the teaching thing. So it's a great situation.
Yeah, that's great, man. Good for you. Yeah. So I'm an adjunct too. I'm an adjunct. You're not still an adjunct. I'm an adjunct here at Furman University, which is in my town here.
Oh yeah, sure.
But
beautiful, man. That's
we just have we have a jazz program, but it's not like not like a degree program. It's just
right, like an area of study or something. Yeah,
big band and some combos and teachers for different instruments, and so that's cool. I get some good. They're mostly classical pianists that come to me.
Right.
They're just interested in learning about jazz, but some of them end up in combos, and I do get some kids that are really focused on jazz, which is nice.
That's great.
So, I like teaching too. I teach privately too, and so I've got a bunch of students right now. So
teaching is wonderful, man. It's a wonderful thing. I know when I started teaching, I was kind of burnt out a little on playing. Actually, not on playing so much, but on practicing. I kind of I used to be a pretty voracious practicer, back in the day, and then I was just kind of burnt out on it, and I was playing a lot, touring and playing gigs. So I just kind of when I was home, I just didn't really feel like shedding too much. And then when I started teaching, man, it really got me excited and anxious to get back to real practicing again.
Yeah.
So it was good for me. It was what I needed, to kind of get a little excited about things and get inspired by the students and they were so good. My first student at UM was Emmett Cohen. I don't know if you know Emmett.
Well, yeah, sure. Well,
of course you know Emmett. That was my first lesson.
Wow, jeez. Yeah.
And he was already doing gigs and touring and stuff. He was kind of a prodigious kid. So I was man, this, so it was cool. It was really good.
Yeah. Teaching is learning,
Yeah.
I mean, I always tell my students I learn more than you do from doing this,
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, so much more, and it's really good. I love teaching too. So.
Man, it keeps me on my toes. It keeps me kind of in the game a little bit more, I think, than I would naturally be. It's easy to get comfortable a little bit. You get to a certain level, you're well, I can play okay,
right.
I'm all right, but you lose some of that that thing when you're young where you're just hungry and just eating up music like a crazy person,
Sure.
So this helps bring a little bit of that energy back to me, which I really dig.
I get that. Yeah. I teach kids we have a high school, fine arts high school here too.
Oh, beautiful.
I teach a bunch of kids that go there too. So I got some really good, very young, teenagers, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, and they're just way into it. The ones that are into it are way into it,
Yeah.
So it's very inspiring. Yeah, like you said, it keeps you on your toes. I'm man, what do I do with this kid next? He plays better than me. What am I going to do for him?
Yeah. No, I know. It's crazy, man. And then they'll come and they'll be correcting me, oh, well, no, that record actually was this thing. And I'm oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
So, they get into it, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's cool. It's very cool. It's inspiring.
It really is. Yeah. I really love it.
So, well, you must write too. I mean, I know you do actually. And I'll say that part of this podcast, which started off as me presenting this to like students or potential students of this music, and it's kind of evolved into a little more than that because I'm interviewing some really great musicians like yourself. I interviewed Art Landy recently. I interviewed Marilyn Crispell. I haven't published some of these.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Greg Tardy and some really David Berkman. I've interviewed some really great musicians. Some of them are published and some of them are not yet. But I always like to ask about what they think about composing and playing too, but composing as well. So if you have any ideas about sharing that with us, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I compose quite a bit, and I've actually been teaching. I'm not teaching it this year, but I taught composition at since I started. So for like almost 11 years, I've been teaching that class, which is more of I don't want to call it a beginner's class, but it is a little more towards basic fundamental stuff. It's interesting because as a jazz musician, I think we I don't want to speak for everyone, of course, but I think I think the composition and the playing are so tied together. We're composing all the time, when we improvise and everything.
Sure.
Perhaps more than in the classical world, although back in the day, all those classical composers were monster pianists,
Sure, of course.
Also, not quite as much anymore, but so that's kind of a thing. And for me, composing it has always been like a vehicle for playing, I think.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, me too. Same, Yeah.
Primarily. Although I will say kind of recently I've veered away from that a little bit more and tried to think less about the blowing and the improvising and stuff and get a little bit more into the like just the composition itself, if that makes sense. The core thing that's happening, so that maybe we could play it and have no blowing and it would still be successful, kind of a thing.
Right.
I'm influenced by a lot of different music too, not just jazz. So I was like really into like rock music and heavy metal, and I'm a Prince fanatic, on the other end of the spectrum, and hip hop and R&B and pop and everything. I love all kinds of music. I almost went into that field more like studio writing kind of thing. Producing when I was really young. That's kind of another thing that I was really interested in doing. And I ended up, doing some of it, but not really getting so deep into it. So like a lot of that kind of stuff comes out, I think, in my composing, not all the time, but a lot of the times.
Yeah.
So to me, if I had a philosophy about composing, aside from like, the nuts and bolts of being a good composer, crafting and working with melodies and having a really expansive knowledge of harmony and harmonic possibilities and rhythmic and phrasing and form and all those kind of things that are the nuts and bolts of it. But for me, like, I think composing is all about you, putting your influences together in a unique way, and then expressing them into a piece of music. I think for a while I was kind of trying to ignore some of my influences, or thinking like, well, this is a jazz piece, so I can't really do that, that kind of thing. More when I was younger. And then later I started to say, no, that's not the right move. And I started thinking about like great composers and like, that's not the right move. And I want to, that's what makes me maybe sound different from someone else, their composition. Right. So I started to really just kind of like embrace things and let things that wanted to come out just come out, and then the composing tools for me are necessary to then take that and make it work in the context that you want it to work in. If that makes sense,
Yeah, yeah. When you say tools, you mean just the thing, your knowledge of how to compose, or
Your knowledge, yeah, your knowledge of composition, your knowledge of harmony and theory and form and melodic development and phrasing and all those rhythmic things and all those kind of things. So meaning like maybe I'm working on a song and then something comes in that's maybe not, seems like it's not in the same vein of what's going on, but something is really telling me that I want that in there, So the composing tools kind of help me to like put things together that maybe don't, seem like they go together at first, And then my last album is very heavily that vibe, there's a lot of different kind of things, happening, going on.
Tell us the name of the album.
Yeah. It's hashtag Cuban American.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'll look it up. I saw this on your website last night.
Cool. Yeah.
Thought it was very interesting. Yeah. Any other recordings of yours with featuring some of your compositions would be nice, but otherwise recordings of yours that you really recommend, that you like, that you would want someone to hear.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. Like I hate most of my old. We all say that, right?
I know the feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I mean, most of my recordings they're mostly originals, and then they maybe have a couple. My first album has a couple more standards than my other ones, but the other albums are almost all originals and maybe one standard or something like that. I mean, I have 4 albums out. I like some stuff on the 2 that came before this album. The last album is called Trio Miami. And I do like a lot. I do like some of the writing on that, actually, since we're talking about composing.
Yeah, to me, that's important. That to me, I don't want to blow the groove here that you got going, but
no, not at all.
To me, the writing is what has helped me learn to play a lot more than anything is not more than anything necessarily. I mean, playing with people and just playing and getting experience, of course, but I think writing tunes really stretches you as much as or more than anything, because I write stuff I can't play, and then I got to figure out I write something and then I can't play over it. I got a couple things right now that I've written that I want to play with my trio, but I don't know how to play on them yet,
Right.
So I'm still trying to figure it out. Some of them I've been playing for 30 years. I'm still trying to figure stuff out on some of them,
Amen.
So,
to that.
Yeah.
Well, you wrote it because it's in there, it's in your ear,
right.
But it may not be like in here yet,
Right, exactly.
So absolutely, Well, I mean, there's a lot of, Coltrane is a great example of a player composer who wrote pieces initially in a period, not his whole life, but wrote pieces in order to practice
right
certain things that he wanted to play, the giant steps matrices and all those kind of things, and then later the modal type of stuff that he wanted to play, and then he ended up, I talk about this in my comp class a lot. He ended up writing all this complex stuff, and then his writing became the opposite, very open and modal, but he was playing all the same shit
right
on top of those. So to me, it's a fascinating example of like, okay, I'm going to write this stuff so that I can really get that sound and those matrices and those progressions under my fingers at a really high level, so that I don't even end in his ear, and so that they're just automatic. And then I don't want to be pigeonholed into playing those exact same patterns. I just want to be able to put that sound at will. So then let me just like play these really open, free type of things. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's really, that's fascinating. I think it's a natural progression to me. I mean, I find myself thinking that direction. Like I'd like to just start playing and, and just bring out all those things that I know about, if I can get to that point,
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
But I still find myself just writing tunes that are fun to play on, improvise on. I mean,
right.
But yeah,
well, if they're not fun to play on, then like, what's the point?
What's the point? Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm going to check out some of your albums. I'm real interested to hear more of your playing. I got I got one of your things with Jonathan Kreisberg. I haven't heard yet, but I'm looking forward.
Oh yeah. The last record. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
That was an interesting record because it was a live gig that we didn't know was being recorded.
Oh, wow.
which
Yeah.
I wasn't really. I thought after the gig, I was like, oh, that wasn't my best performance, you know. And then I found out, oh, we're gonna release that as a record. I was like, oh well. But you know, when you're a sideman, you don't have much say in that, so you just have to. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
but there's some nice stuff. There's some great. He sounds really, really killing on that record.
I mean, I'd never heard him play before at all. Actually, I had very little experience hearing him play. I'll say that, and that blew me away. That concert blew everybody in the band. I mean, that drummer was great, Carl.
Carl is he's killing, man. He's a young guy too.
Yeah. Everybody was just killing, man.
Yeah,
it was very impressive. You know, how did you hook up with him?
So it's a funny story. We actually went to the same high school. Although we weren't really close. He's a couple years older than me. So he was like a senior and I was a sophomore. And he was like way ahead. I was still more like classical guy, you know, and he was like way already like a badass jazz fusion guy, you know, like way ahead of everybody. So like, I think I played once or twice with him, but we didn't really like hang out or anything. He was just kind of like, oh my God, this guy, like this amazing older guy. He was kind of scary, you know? And then we really didn't stay in touch at all. And then, I don't know, maybe what's this, 2023 now? Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 years ago or something, he saw, or 8 to 10 years ago, I was playing with Roy Haynes, and Christian McBride was playing with us at the Monterey Jazz Festival. And he was there playing with somebody, and he was checking out the show, and he was like, oh my God, that's the classical guy that I went to high school with. And I think he even knew that I was playing jazz, you know? So he came up after the show. He came up to me backstage, and we were talking, and you know, and he's like, "Oh man, we should play together sometime." So we kind of kept in touch, and then we tried to make it happen a few times, and it didn't work. And then I think in 2018 or so, you know, he had some gigs in New York, and it worked out timing, and I went up and played some gigs, and then we've been playing ever since then. Yeah, so kind of a cool story.
Yeah, and that's a great group, man.
They're killers, man. Yeah, they keep me on my toes.
I mean, I think you keep them on theirs too.
Oh man,
that's fair to say. Yeah, that was great. Really great to hear. So, tell me some other things about. I'd like to know. I noticed on your website that you got some kind of thing teaching at a Danos. Is it called Danos or? What's the thing?
Oh, Dranoff, maybe?
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Yeah.
The Dranoff Piano Foundation?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Tell us about that. What
sure. So I mean, lately I've gotten into some things kind of like outside of the playing, writing world, like more artistic directing and things like that, and being involved in a couple of organizations. And Dranoff is one of them. I'm also on the board of directors for this really great nonprofit arts organization called Arts for Learning. That has these. They're a huge organization down here in South Florida, and they do arts programs for for schools in kind of underprivileged areas mostly, and things like that, and try to provide arts education and things like that, and all the arts, not just music and art, visual art and stuff. So Dranoff is a wonderful organization that, its initial thing when it started was a two piano. Well, they're the Dranoff Two Piano Foundation. So they had a very famous. It was all classical, and they had a very famous duo piano competition, the Dranoff competition, every year. That was an international competition, the biggest one. They haven't done that in a while, but that's kind of how they started. Okay. And they also program concerts. They have a concert series. So a few years back, I think the director, Carlene Sawyer, who's a wonderful lady that I work with, wanted to kind of expand their reach a little bit and get into some other types of music outside of jazz. Including, outside of classical, including jazz and Latin music and other kind of world music and things like that. So I started off my relationship with them getting a commission. They would commission an original two piano composition every year from a different composer. and they wanted to start getting some people outside of the classical realm. So my first kind of contact with them was they gave me a commission to compose a 2-piano piece, which was something I had never done before.
Yeah.
But I had played a ton of 2-piano music in high school and college, like a lot.
Yeah.
So I was like, I think I can do this. Classical duo piano stuff. Yeah.
Right.
So I was like, man, I think I could do this. I played enough of this music. Like, I think I could do it. So I did it. It was really fun, very cool. And I ended up, then I started working in capacity with them, music directing this wonderful show they do called Piano Slam. It's very hard to explain, but it involves kids, students in the area that write poetry, inspired by whatever the commission piece is. So they listen to the commission piece and then they write this poetry. And then there's a competition and they do this big concert at the Performance Arts Center here in downtown Miami, where the kids read their poetry and there's 2-piano music and there's a DJ and there's all sorts of crazy stuff happening.
That's great.
Yeah, it's really very cool stuff. And then after that, they ended up asking me to be their artistic director a couple of years ago. So I've been helping program their concerts and that as they're kind of looking into getting into more, like I said, like out of the classical. They still do the classical thing, right? But now we're programming, like we have this year we have an amazing steel pan jazz virtuoso, a good friend of mine actually, who plays. It's not Caribbean jazz. It's not. It's just modern jazz. He just happens to play the steel pan. Like he plays like Michael Brecker on the steel pan. It's insane.
Who's this? Who's it?
Leon Foster Thomas. Yeah, check him out, man. He's incredible. Leon Foster Thomas.
That is his name. Write it down. Right.
Yeah. He has. I actually recorded one of his records. It's called Metamorphosis. If you find it, it was his last record, and it's great.
Looked at it.
And they had Etienne Charles. What's that?
I interrupted, but one great thing about doing these interviews is I found out about all this great music that I haven't heard from different people. I mean, I'm like, my CD collection is going out off the chain.
I get that from my students. I hear about new music from my students all the time. So it's the same kind of vibe.
Yeah, sure. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt what you were saying though. That was
no, not at all. I'm just saying so they had him and Etienne Charles, the great trumpet player, and his band Creole Soul was on the concert series last year. I've been doing an Afro-Cuban concert on Cuban Independence Day every May. They're Afro-Cuban jazz concert. Nice. So it's cool. It's like a very different kind of thing to get into outside of just playing and stuff. But it's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it working with them.
Yeah, nice. That's great. You got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
It keeps it interesting, I mean, it
really does. Yeah. It really does. And it's always like doing stuff that I always tell my students this, as I'm sure you do as well. I think we want to stay in our little comfort zone, and do the gigs with the people we want to play with. And, but getting out of your comfort zone and trying things that you've never done or not even sure you're how to do it is great for you in so many different ways, So I always, not that I say yes to everything, but like if something feels like, well, there's definitely a reward in there somewhere, and it's going to be challenging and different. I 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that makes me want to look around for some things like that here. Maybe it's a smaller community, obviously, but
but I bet there's stuff there, for sure, and I'll bet there's even like community grants and stuff that they have for arts and music. A lot of people don't know that, but like there's a ton of that stuff in bigger cities, and certainly Charlotte's a bigger city. So
I'm actually in Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're in Greenville. I keep thinking Charlotte.
No, but
Al Circle.
We do have we do have an arts council, and I've gotten a couple of grants for them actually to do some CDs in the past. And
that's awesome.
A few years ago, I got a grant to go to New York and study with Frank Kimbrough.
Whoa, that's killing! Wow.
Yeah, I spent a couple of I spent 4 or 5 days in New York and met with Frank like 2 or 3 times for a couple of long sessions.
I never had the honor of meeting him. He was an amazing pianist.
Oh. Yeah, he really was, and good guy too.
Yeah.
So
I know Al played with him a bit. Yeah.
Actually, I first heard him on a record of Ron's with Ron and Frank, because Ron and Frank went to college together, and then
Right. That's the connection.
so that was my connection, you know. And Al was on that record actually.
Right.
So,
Right.
so, yeah, that's cool. So this is great. It's great talking to you.
Yeah. Same here, man.
Stuff, man. Yeah. So what do you say something to my students, like my young students, like 14, 15 years old? Do you have anything that you would say to them? Like keep this in mind, or do this, or, you know?
Yeah.
Try to reinforce what I say to them.
Yeah, I'm thinking I better not say anything that's not like goes against what. Well, I'll say listen to Keith Davis. That's what I'll say first. Listen to your teacher.
Yeah. Do what your teacher says.
Do what he says. You know. No, I always, look, I sympathize a lot with younger players today, because even when I was, a younger player, I didn't grow up listening to jazz or bebop or anything. So when I was first exposed to it, it seems very foreign and strange. And now, 30 years later or whatever, it's even more removed from young culture. At least like my parents listened to like big band and my mom had like Duke Ellington big band records and like lighter stuff like Glenn Miller and, Harry James and that kind of stuff. Good stuff, still good stuff.
Yeah, sure.
But like I was listening to like, Van Halen and, Rush and Led Zeppelin, and that's what I was into, and Prince.
Right.
So what drew me to jazz was like the improvisation aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's what hit me, really.
Yeah. I'll say something. Since you're a Prince fan, I'm going to tell you a quick story.
Please.
In about 1983 or 84, I went to Berkeley in 1982, just one semester. And I had a good friend, Satoshi. He's a drummer. He's in New York. Satoshi Takeshi. He's still a friend of mine. In fact, I interviewed him. I haven't gotten it published yet, but so when he got out of Berkeley, he came down to Georgia and stayed with me at my parents' house for a few months. Yeah. And we ended up playing a gig at the Hilton in Macon, Georgia. They just opened this Hilton, and they gave us all rooms in the hotel, and they fed us. And so we're playing in this little club in this hotel, and Prince was playing at the Coliseum across the street. And so they all came into our gig after their concert. They came into our gig,
No way.
At the time, I didn't even know. I'd heard of Prince, but I didn't know who he was. You
said 83, right?
83 or 84. Yeah.
That was like just before he blew up. He blew up in 84 when Purple Rain came out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Purple Rain maybe it was 84. I can't remember, because I think Purple Rain might have come out already.
Yeah. It might have just come out. Right.
Maybe. Yeah. But anyway, so after the gig, after we got done playing, Satoshi and I go get on the elevator to go up to our rooms, and Prince is on the elevator with that big bodyguard with the bald-headed guy. Yeah. With that girl. I don't know if it's Apollonia, if it was her or if it was another girl. And they're like kind of in the corner, like snuggling up, and he's looking at me like, yeah, look, check me out. So I rode in the elevator. With Prince.
Oh my God. I'm so jealous. You have no idea. That's an amazing story, man. Because he was such a private guy. Like he was kind of an enigma. Like to see him out like that. Like that's crazy, man. That's amazing.
Yeah, sure.
Wow.
Yeah, that's funny. And like I said, I hardly knew who he was at the time. But,
sure. Yeah.
But good story though.
No, that's a great story. I love it. But so that's who I was checking out, and then I was playing piano, but again, classical stuff. So getting back to what I would tell your students is, and I know today the way people consume music is so different, than the way we consume music. And so you're not getting really good idea of who's playing on what and what year was this, and which maybe when you're 14 or 15, you don't even care about, probably. I probably wouldn't have cared either. But what I always tell the young students is to really try to organize what you're listening to and understand what it is, when it was recorded, what was happening, in that time, who were the players, because I think it becomes more real that way,
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like jazz can really seem like a bunch of scales on a page and a chord and,
right.
you know, and because we can do that to it. We can codify it and teach it that way and stuff.
That's how we try to, that's how we communicate it, right? We try.
Of course, that's how you communicate it. Yeah. And that's great, you know?
Yeah.
But not, you know, like not understanding the context of like, you know, well, why did Coltrane sound in the 60s that way, you know, and not that way in the 50s or whatever? Why did Miles Davis sound like completely, you know, well, he didn't sound so different, but his music sounded different, you know? And I think that helps kind of like personalize it and contextualize it and make it more real and really more interesting to learn. And that's something I really didn't get so much later in college, you know, and even after college, you know.
Yeah, me too. Sure.
So I always say that, and I always, you know, my big thing is about, and this is not just to young students, this is kind of to everyone, but is the practicing thing, you know. Practicing jazz, you know, I started off, as I said, classical, which is very easy in a way to practice, right? The notes are there, you learn it, you make sure you get the fingering, then you put the dynamics in, and then you memorize, and then you hopefully can express yourself, you know, once that's all done. But it's like a pretty basic standard, but it's not really any other way to learn classical music. You know?
Right, sure.
The jazz is so different, you know, especially for pianists. You go into you know, well, you got to learn the voicings, left-hand voicings, two-hand voicings, comping. You need to learn, you know, playing the melody with one hand and comping with the left hand. There's solo piano playing. There's trio piano playing. There's improvising. There's harmony and theory. There's rhythmic stuff. There's playing different styles, you know, within the jazz kind of thing. So it's really overwhelming. So what I always really kind of harp on, and it's something I base my whole improv class that I teach on this, is to try to really organize your practicing so that you're practicing less things at a time, that you really practice one or two very specific things, like an agenda for, even if it's just 30 minutes that you do that, and then you move on to the next thing. I think I spent the first, 8 years of my jazz practice saying, oh, I got to learn, you know, It Could Happen to You. So I get the chords under my fingers and then I just play It Happens to You for 30 minutes, you know, over and over without stopping. And then I'm like, I don't feel like I got too much better at that, you know, rather than saying, well, why don't I just look at the first 4 bars of It Could Happen to You and see all the possibilities that I could play and really, really get in there, you know? So that idea of targeted practice, and limiting yourself and not worrying about, you know, playing a great solo every time you're practicing, you know, that's not what practice is about. You know, you should be sounding pretty bad for a while. You know, when you start to sound great, then you're done. You move on to the next thing, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's great advice. Yeah, that's great advice.
I just think it's the hardest thing is to become a really good, efficient practicer, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And trying to teach someone, because the other thing, you know, this, everybody's different. I mean, every one of these kids that comes to me and takes a lesson, every one of them, they're all different, you know? And you got to like find what is the point? Where's the point that I can communicate with them? What can I say to them to do to get them to practice this one thing that I see that they really need? Yes. But it's a blind spot to them. They can't see it, right? It's your job is to help them find that blind spot and work on it.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. Oh, no, you're absolutely 100% correct. Yeah. That's you know, and also because, like you said, because they're all different, you know, there's a lot of advice out there.
Right.
That says like, this is the way to do it, you know, like this is how, and I don't feel that at all, because as you just said, everyone is different. Everyone learns very differently, you know? So you can't say like, well, you should never learn anything in jazz reading music. You know, you should always learn. Well, but what if you're like a very visual learner?
Right. Sure.
You know, I'm a visual learner. When I see things written down, my brain processes it better and faster.
Right.
So what, am I going to not do that just because it's, you know, that's stupid.
Just
you know?
Because somebody told me, or somebody.
Yeah, just because they said, oh, well, jazz is, you know, you want to get your ear, but, you know, I have good ears too, you know, so you do a mixture of both, You know,
Absolutely.
so like I always say, play to your strengths. You know, yeah, you want to work on your weaknesses, of course.
Yeah.
You should be, you know, if you're having trouble, you know, hearing stuff, well, then you want to lean into that more. But that doesn't mean that, you know, you're never going to use a piece of music to help you out, or write something down, you know, so you could visually have it there in front of you. So, you know, so I would say that too, like, just, you know, don't be afraid of doing the things that work for you, you know, while also trying to improve things that maybe that, you know, that are weaker.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I remember I read a thing about Ron Carter where he said, and this is Ron Carter, you know, where he says that he likes to use music, even if he knows the tune, you know, for the same reason I just said, because he's visual, and he says when he sees the chords, his mind just does different things.
Yeah.
And
that happens with me too. Same thing. I know. I can play a tune. I've been playing for 40 years, and I put the music in front of me, and all of a sudden I find myself trying different things harmonically because I just think that way, you know. I'm like, that does this. I could do this instead, you know. It changes something in the way you think. Maybe it's just the change, you know. It could be that you're just trying something, a fresh approach. I mean, who knows? Who can explain that? But whatever works, though, right? Yeah.
Well, you know, your people forget. They think, well, you're learning music, so it's all oral. Sorry, but that's not true. The way you learn anything, you're using all your senses, you know, and they're each kind of doing their thing. Whether you're looking at the piano keys and that gives you an idea because you see a pattern or a shape, your mind sees something just in the visually on the keys, you know, and then when you look away, you're not using your visual sense anymore. So something else takes in your ear, you know, but it's all good, you know, it's all good.
Right. Yeah. All those things are part of it, you know? Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, obviously we have to memorize music, and there's times where we're not going to use music for whatever reason, but you know, so.
Yeah, sure.
And just, you know, the last thing I'll say is just listening, you know, for me, like I said, I didn't grow up playing bebop music. So as much as I had it in the education system of breaking it down into these, it's, you know, voice leading and closures and chromaticism, you know, my bebop playing was always weak because I just didn't listen to it because I wanted to listen to Herbie and McCoy and Keith, you know.
Yeah, right.
You know,
sure.
And once, and actually, I think when I moved to New York and started playing with some incredible guys and hearing them play that stuff really authentically, I was like, okay, I got to deal with this. And what it was just listening to that music all the time, like inundating. Right. So you can be working on stuff, you know, with the transcriptions or by ear or whatever, but like just having that music that you're working on in your ear all the time, you know, you can't listen to 3 bebop songs and say like, okay, I understand. No.
Oh, I got it. Yeah.
No, you can't, you know, mostly because of the phrasing and articulation and stuff like that. So just, you know, not being afraid of, and again, that's the problem with the way we consume music doesn't help out, right? Because we have these little singles we grab from here and here. We make a little playlist, and, you know, we're not saying, I'm going to listen to this entire Charlie Parker album, you know, all 10 tracks from top to bottom.
Right. So that's what we used to do, was get a whole album and sit down in front of the stereo and listen to it. Right. That's not what kids do now, you know?
No, not even. It's completely different. Yeah.
Not even close. We look at the liner notes. I mean,
at the liner notes.
I had albums. I don't know how old you are, but I had albums, and I'd read the liner notes, and I was fascinated, you know. And,
when I was listening to rock stuff, I would draw the albums covers, you know, while I'm listening to the record. Nice. My brother had a lot of vinyl, so I would like be copying and tracing, you know, while I'm listening, reading, like you said, reading the liner notes. Yeah, it was a very different experience, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
One thing that's cool, I will say though, is that there's so many videos available of these older guys that I think that's tremendous to actually be able to watch, you know, Miles Quintet, a video that, you know, when we were studying that would never happen. Like never.
No, of course not.
You know,
no, I teach it in the summer. I teach a jazz history course at school.
Cool.
And I was amazed at some of the stuff. I like colorized concerts of Charles Mingus from Europe, and Bud Powell playing
Unbelievable.
colorized video. It looks like it was made yesterday, you know. And there's Bud, one of my heroes, you know. Just like, wow, amazing, you know. So there's so much.
Insane,
and I go online when I do that class. I go online and look and see if I see any new videos. There's every time there's all kind of new stuff out there.
Yeah, you're right. It just keeps coming out. Like it's like a never-ending well of
where did this all come from? You know,
it's amazing, man.
Yeah, it's just crazy, man. Yeah. So, well, man, this has just been great talking to you. I really appreciate you doing this, and it's just been great having this conversation. I hope we can keep having our conversation. You know.
Absolutely. Forward. Yeah, man. Great talking to you and meeting you. And I always love talking about music. So
yeah, me too, man.
It's wonderful to speak with you.
It's great to do this. So I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up for the day? Got anything else you'd like to say? Any other interest besides music that you want to talk about, or just anything in general that you'd like to say to wrap it up?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, I have other interests, but I have a family, so that's a big part of my life, you know.
Yeah, I have kids too. I got 2 kids. So.
Yeah, me too. 2 kids. So you know how that is.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely, man. How old are your kids?
I have 2 girls, 13 and 6.
Well, I got 2 boys, 19 and 25.
Oh, wow, man. Well, so you're off the tough part. You're
Yeah. You're coming into teenagers, man. Watch out.
Oh yeah, that's already started. So it gives you a whole new look.
That's
life.
That's a whole new perspective.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah. Well, once again, man, thank you so much. I hope I get to see you live, play again sometime, and
absolutely, man.
Look forward to talking to you some more going forward. So,
thank you, Keith. Appreciate it, man. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks for checking out Notes on Jazz. If you want to communicate with me, I offer free consultations. Just check the podcast notes for a link. You can also find a link to my website for CDs, downloads, and videos. See you next time at Notes on Jazz.